What if everything you were taught about the ancient world was missing one chapter? A chapter that was swallowed by the sea, not in mythology, not in fiction, but in the geological record, in ancient maps, and in the words of civilizations that had no reason to lie. What if Atlantis was never meant to be a story? What if it was a warning? For more than 2,000 years, the name Atlantis has lived in the space between legend and history. Most people know it as a myth, a drowned island empire invented by the Greek philosopher Plato around 360 BC. Something told around fires and written in books, but never taken seriously by mainstream science. But here is what most documentaries never tell you. Plato did not write Atlantis as a myth. He wrote it as a historical account. He specifically and repeatedly called it true. He gave it dates, coordinates, dimensions, and a precise description of its destruction. And in the centuries since, a quiet collection of geologists, archaeologists, ancient language scholars, and oceanographers have been piecing together something deeply unsettling. The evidence they found does not prove Atlantis, but it refuses to disappear. This is the evidence they never show you. To understand the mystery, you have to go back to the source. In 360 BC, Plato wrote two dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. In them, an Athenian statesman named Solon reportedly received a story from Egyptian priests in the city of Sais. The priests claimed their records stretched back 9,000 years before Solon's time. And in those records, they told him, was the story of a great war between Athens and a powerful island empire located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. Plato's description of Atlantis was strikingly specific. It was larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined. It had a capital city built in concentric rings of land and water. It had advanced architecture, hot and cold running springs, enormous harbors, and a culture of extraordinary power. Its people, Plato said, became corrupted by wealth and ambition, and the gods in their judgment sent earthquakes and floods. In a single day and night, the island sank beneath the Atlantic Ocean. Now, here is the question that every serious researcher asks. Why would Plato, one of history's most careful thinkers, invent a detailed geography, a specific timeline, a precise location, and a concrete description of societal collapse, just to illustrate a moral? He had used mythological allegory before. He did not do it like this. So either Plato fabricated the most elaborate historical lie in ancient literature, or he was transmitting something real. Here is where the story stops being just ancient text and starts becoming science around 12,000 years ago, almost exactly when Plato's timeline places the destruction of Atlantis. Earth experienced one of the most catastrophic geological events in human memory. It is called the Younger Dryas Impact Event, and it is not a theory. It is a documented, peer-reviewed scientific occurrence. Approximately 12,900 years ago, something, possibly a fragmented comet or asteroid, struck or exploded over North America and possibly other parts of the Northern Hemisphere. The evidence includes a platinum-rich layer in the geological record found across 4 continents, shock-fractured minerals called shocked quartz, and nanodiamonds that only form under extreme impact pressure. These markers appear simultaneously across sites in North America, Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. The result? Massive wildfires, catastrophic flooding as ice sheets collapsed. Sea levels rose dramatically, in some estimates by as much as 400 feet over the centuries that followed. Entire coastlines that were once inhabited were submerged. Now consider this, the theory known as the Richat Structure, located in present-day Mauritania in the Sahara Desert, has drawn attention from researchers for one unsettling reason. Its geography, concentric rings of land visible from space, matches Plato's description of Atlantis's capital city with remarkable precision. The dimensions align, the rings align, even the presence of freshwater springs in the region aligns. This is a theory, not confirmed evidence, but it is not nothing. And if Atlantic Ocean levels rose dramatically after 10,000 BC, as the geological record confirms they did, then any coastal or low-lying civilization of that era would have been swallowed. Entire cultures, entire histories, gone. In 1513, a Turkish admiral named Piri Reis drew a map. The map showed the coastline of South America with striking accuracy. It showed Antarctica, a continent that would not be officially discovered by Western explorers for another 300 years. And it showed Antarctica without its ice cap, as it would have looked before the Ice Age, as geologists now believe it looked approximately 6,000 years ago or more. Piri Reis noted in annotations that his map was based on older source maps, some reportedly dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. He was not alone. The Orontius Phineus map of 1531 also depicted Antarctica with inland rivers and mountain ranges, features that match what lies beneath the ice sheet today, confirmed only by modern radar imaging. How did medieval cartographers accurately depict a continent buried under ice that they could not have physically visited or surveyed? Researchers who have studied these maps seriously, including at the US Air Force's cartographic section, which reviewed the Piri Reis Map in 1960, could not explain the accuracy using known historical cartography. The question these maps raise is not whether Atlantis existed. The question is, who was surveying and mapping Earth with this level of precision before the civilizations we know about? And where is their record? Here is the part of this story that most people are not prepared for. Across virtually every ancient civilization on Earth, cultures that had no contact with each other, no shared language, no trade routes, there is a flood story. The Sumerians had the Epic of Gilgamesh, in which a great flood destroys humanity, and one chosen man builds a vessel. The Hindus had Manu and the Great Deluge. The Mayans wrote of a sky collapse and a world consumed by water. The indigenous peoples of North America, Australia, and the Pacific Islands all carry oral traditions of a time when the sea rose and swallowed the land. Now, there are two explanations for this. The first is that all these cultures independently invented the same story about water destroying the world as a metaphor, as a myth, as coincidence. That is possible. The second explanation is more disturbing. They all remembered it because they all survived it. The geological record is clear. Approximately 12,000 years ago, sea levels globally rose by hundreds of feet over a span of centuries. Coastal civilizations, and researchers now believe coastal settlements, were among the most common in early humanity. Built near water for survival, would have been forced inland generation by generation. Watching the sea take everything they had built, those people did not disappear. They survived. They became refugees. They integrated into other cultures, and they carried the memory of what the ocean had done to their world, carrying it forward in the only way they could. In story, in warning. In myth, Plato was not the first to remember Atlantis. He may have simply been the last to write it down. It would be dishonest to tell you that Atlantis has been found. It has not. No ruins have been conclusively identified. No artifacts have been dated to a pre-flood civilization with the sophistication Plato described. The Richat Structure remains a compelling but unconfirmed hypothesis. The Bimini Road, a formation of underwater stone blocks discovered near the Bahamas in 1968, has been argued over by geologists and researchers for decades, with no final consensus on whether it is natural or man-made. What we do know with scientific certainty is this: the world 12,000 years ago was radically different from the world we inherited. Sea levels were far lower. Coastal land that is now underwater was once dry. Civilizations existed earlier than our textbooks have traditionally acknowledged. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dated to at least 11,500 years ago, was a massive ceremonial complex built by people we have no name for, and the human story is far older, far more complex and far more tragic than we have been comfortable admitting. The ocean does not give back what it takes, but it does leave echoes, in stone, in language, in the haunted memory of people who watched their world drown and spent the rest of their lives trying to warn their children. Maybe Atlantis was never one place. Maybe it was 100 places. And maybe we are still walking over their ruins. We just have not looked deep enough yet. The ocean is not empty. It is an archive. Right now, robotic submersibles are mapping the ocean floor in higher resolution than ever before. Each year, new formations are found, new structures, new questions. In 2001, Sonar surveys off the coast of Cuba detected what appeared to be geometric formations on the ocean floor, stone structures in patterns, at a depth of 2,000 feet. They were investigated briefly, then largely abandoned due to funding. The mystery was never resolved. We are still at the beginning of understanding what lies beneath, and perhaps that is the most chilling thought of all. That somewhere in the darkness of the deep ocean, the evidence is still there, silent, patient, waiting for the day someone finally decides the truth matters more than what is comfortable to believe. Plato wrote that Atlantis sank in a single day and a single night, but the memory of it has lasted 12,000 years. Some things, it seems, refuse to stay buried. If you want more stories from humanity's forgotten past, the civilizations that rose before history, the catastrophes that reshaped our world, the mysteries that refuse to be solved, subscribe to Mythic Origins. New episodes every week. The past is darker than you think.